Oops, Neely is.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. Sorry about that. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our Hormones, Health, and HRT call. I'm just going to give it 30 seconds to a minute to let everyone in. But as you're joining, put in the chat feature where you are calling in from. We'd love to see where you're from. I'm calling in from Dallas. Kristen and Maria, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Chicago.
I'm in New York City.
Ooh, New York City. Fun. And cold. Again, okay, we're seeing Montana, Park City, Utah, Richmond. Awesome. Austin, Dallas, hello. I can wave at you. San Antonio, South Carolina, all over the United States. This is amazing. Love this. Okay, well, we are going to go ahead and respect your time and respect our host's time. So, again, welcome to our Hormones, Health, and HRT training. You're going to learn so much today. I can't wait to introduce you to our guest speakers, our hormone experts. Many of you know me. My name's Neely Cheddar, and I am your host for tonight or today. We're going to talk about hormones, health, but mainly HRT because that's the hot topic. Maria and Kristen are from Wise and Well, and I'll be sharing how you can get in touch with them at the end. I'll share their link. But again, thanks for taking your time out of your day to join our conversation. Just a little bit about me. I'm 48 years old. I am right in the thick of things with all of you. I'm post-menopause. I'm a faster way to fat loss coach. I'm a certified personal trainer and a certified macro coach. So if you follow me on Instagram, you already know my two top things are strength training and protein. And we will talk a little bit with our hormone experts about those things too. But I'm not an expert on hormones. First to tell you that, but I know enough to be dangerous. So I brought in the big guns today. This is Wise and Well. Kristen and Maria, welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I'm just going to let you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your journey.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. Maria, do you want to go first?
Sure, why not? So I was menopausal at 47, I think it was. But in the years leading up to that, I experienced some symptoms and I had always been kind of holistically minded. So I knew that I didn't want to go to my corner, doctor. So I trekked into New York City. I was actually living in New Jersey at the time, but I trekked into New York City and I visited a very well-known, multi-published doctor, had a holistic center, Park Avenue, New York City, Lower Park Avenue. And it was a mixed experience. Like he did give me HRT, which is great. We'll probably get to that later about how starting before full menopause is actually ideal and optimal. But I wasn't given any education at all. I was also given some drugs and really, really high dose vitamin D and just an excessive amount of like pills, right? Not a lot of education. And I just kind of like knew that something was off. It was probably better than going to like a conventional doctor, but the education was so lacking. And I just knew like, okay, I have to go back to school at this point. Figured this out for myself. And it's been, it's been probably now, it's been like 10 years since, I first had all these perimenopause symptoms. And yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. So I kind of have the opposite experience of Maria in that my mom went through full surgical menopause at 32. So a lot of times the timing of menopause is very genetically driven. So because she had surgical menopause at 32, I had no idea what to expect. And I was one of the many women who was given a Mirena after the birth of my last child at, ironically, the age of 32, and told, you can keep this straight through menopause. This is going to be great, makes your whole situation easy. Little did I know that it was going to actually prevent me from ever finding out when I went into menopause. But by my early 40s, I was having a lot of issues, a lot of health issues. And I was, really kind of playing whack-a-mole, trying to figure out what was going on. Was it nutrition? Dial that in. Was it diet, exercise being the biggest kind of low-hanging fruit? I was a competitive rower at the time and a competitive cyclist. And so I was probably over exercising, but, tried to modify some of that, but it was just nonstop to the point where I'm going to then my provider in Boston, which is home to big pharma and home to very conventional thinking, and saying something is wrong with me. Like to the point I'm like, do I have Lyme disease? Maybe this is lupus. Like I was so desperate to find something and ultimately was completely gaslit, told I had nothing wrong with me. My labs were normal. I begged her to test my hormones, refused to test them. And then ultimately said, screw this. I can't rely on these people to do it for me. So I did go back to school to learn things. And by the time I ultimately realized I need to take my Mirena out, I was already menopausal. And that was a huge shock. And to be perfectly honest, left me pretty angry, because once you understand sort of what you lose when you lose your hormones beyond fertility and menstruation, you'll realize the increasing health risk that sort of environment presents. And I just felt really, not guided, not cared for, and put at risk, to be perfectly frank, with hormonal deficiencies. So, Maria and I ended up finding each other, joining forces, and we're pretty passionate about it because we both had, essentially opposite sides of the experience. And between the two of us, feel like we represent a lot of women. So.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you guys both went back to school, because you were both very in a profession that was successful at the time and changed your whole world, right?
Yeah. I was a corporate attorney, so this was a huge shift. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for doing what you're doing and educating women and helping them through this journey, which doesn't have to be miserable.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't. But
Absolutely.
there's just so many people that don't even know what to do or where to go. There's just a lot of misinformation. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We can't get to everything, but we'll give you some resources. So let's just start off with like a basic understanding of what exactly is menopause. There's a lot of women that are confused by even the terms of peri-menopause, post-menopause, and all of those things.
I'm gonna do this, and then you can cover the slide and give them the more visual. So essentially, it might be just simpler for everyone to kind of imagine it as this menopausal transition, because we do get really hung up on pre, peri, post, etc. But there's a time in midlife when essentially we're in this declining environment of hormones. We're just going to show you this really quick graph. This is kind of looking at hormonal shifts over time. And as you can see, puberty, we have like a really erratic presentation of our hormones, and then things sort of level out and we get this nice, environment of proper hormonal regulation. And then perimenopause, or the beginning of the menopausal transition, is really first identified with this sharp decline in progesterone. And then as progesterone declines, estrogen starts to follow, but it gets a little bit erratic. So our progesterone is constantly going down. This period right there where we see that erratic place, this is common in every woman as she transitions through this phase. And to be perfectly honest, this is where you hear the very inappropriate term estrogen dominance. So what many women in midlife are told they have estrogen dominance, the reason why that's really just kind of a false label is because estrogen dominance clinically really refers to an overproduction of estrogen from the ovaries. And as you can see, you're falling. Estrogen is not as high as it was at its highest peak, but its relationship to progesterone and these sort of erratic spikes in the production create this environment of symptoms that have unfortunately been labeled estrogen dominance in midlife. We would say you're still estrogen deficient. It's just that you don't have enough progesterone to blunt the shifts in these estrogen. So that's what's going on. And in terms of how long this lasts, for some women, it could be 2 years, some women, it could be 10 years. And once you finally go 12 months without a period, that day of the anniversary of 12 months without a period becomes menopause. Menopause exists for one single day, that one day, and then everything after that is considered post-menopause. So we just kind of talk about it as the menopausal transition, because it's the time period where you're getting these shifts, and then, the rest of your life really is how it is. So, there's definitely a lot of confusion around the language. And I think one of the biggest things that Maria and I focus on is that women think that they have to wait. They have to wait until that day of menopause, till they're postmenopausal, and only then, for some reason, do they have license to respond to their health. And that is completely false, because as Maria and I just both shared, as we were going through it, we were suffering. And it's not just the symptoms, but also what's going on behind the scenes that women are never told about, and that prevents them from getting the proper care.
Yeah, I love that chart that you just showed, because it actually showed people in their 30s or women in their 30s. It can start then. So don't have to wait till you're 52 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I mean, common symptoms that my clients usually share with me are low libido, hot flashes, weight gain. But those are just the tip of the iceberg, right? Because there's a lot of stuff
Yes.
going on behind the scenes that we don't really even know about. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, we get this question all the time, kind of in relationship to, should I use HRT, or like, what's the determinant? And I kind of had to respond to someone today who, I guess, accused or said, well, women really need to do all of those other things first. And what we mean by those other things. Yeah, it's like the stuff that you do and the stuff that we do, which is like exercising and making sure, you're sleeping as good as you can, just don't binge watch Netflix until midnight type of a thing. Eating well, getting optimal animal protein. And like, yeah, these things are super important, but they're not going to necessarily save you from having an atrophic vagina, which is, it's not talked about. So if I kind of shocked everyone by saying vagina, the thing is like, it is not talked about. Like, a lot of women suffer from that. Sorry, we're big meat eaters, not going to help you there.
Right.
All right. Fasting, not going to help you there. So yeah, I'm sorry, I got a little bit off track there.
No, I mean, it's your point was that, from a symptom, I mean, if you watch like the Super Bowl this year, it was shocking, honestly, to see hot flash commercials in the middle of the Super Bowl. Like, I was like, what world are we in right now? But that's where the marketing hits. So it makes women think, well,
I don't have
hot flashes. Yeah, then I must not be, that bad or symptomatic or really in the throes of this, etc. But it can be foggy brain. It can be increased, poor stress coping. It can be the disrupted sleep. It can be a dry vagina. Sex doesn't feel good. And then it kind of goes hand in hand with also lower libido, because lower estrogen actually means lower interest in sex. And so, there's so much going on. And I think the hardest thing that Maria and I see women struggle with is, let's face it, the 40s are a time of a lot going on in the life of a woman, whether you're partnered, whether you have children, whether it's your career, your parents. I mean, we're kind of in this sandwich generation moment where everyone's caregiver, not our own. We're dealing with all of these things. Why would it ever occur to us that my lack of sleep is actually due to low hormones, or that the fact that I'm ripping everyone's heads off is because of low hormones, or I can't get through my day without making a list of everyone's hormones? We all just sort of attribute it to this, like, I'm stretched, right? I'm at the far reaches of my bandwidth. But the reality is this low hormone environment is happening, and it is having a significant impact on how those things are manifesting.
The things you can feel and see, and hot flashes are a concern for cardiovascular health, but like, not having hot flashes doesn't mean that there aren't processes happening behind the scenes that have zero symptoms, and they are in a status of low estrogen.
Yeah. And you asked, Neely, I mean, a perfect one for women, I think, particularly in, women that you're going to be attracting, is going to be that shift in the body composition, right? That's the biggest one. And one of the things women don't understand is that estrogen has a unique dance with insulin. And insulin, we know, is kind of a growth hormone. It's anabolic. It can add fat when it's too high. But estrogen tells insulin where to put that fat. And as women, we're more comfortable in our younger years with a little booty, little hips, etc. All of a sudden we hit 40, 45, and we're like, what the hell is this tire around my belly? I haven't done anything differently. Well, the difference is your insulin has lost the signal of estrogen. And when insulin and estrogen don't have each other to talk to, insulin just goes, I know where to pack it on. I'm going to pack it on her midsection. And the saddest thing is, what do women respond with? They go plant-based, or they drop their protein, they cardio exercise more, try to eat less, etc. Well, that's all actually hastening this whole response. And so shifting body composition would be a perfect example. But Maria and I were just working on some slides for other practitioners we're teaching, and things like changes in your lipids. So women might go in and all of a sudden be told you have high cholesterol out of nowhere. Nobody tells you that estradiol is actually needed for a proper cholesterol synthesis from the liver. right? And so women, yeah, we catch up to men with heart disease by the time we hit 55, but all of that actually started at 40, right? And so if we knew that and we could address it before we hit that wall, we wouldn't be dealing with heart disease on par with men. How many men get Alzheimer's compared to women? How many men have osteoporosis compared to women? It's not a secret. There's a big difference between us and men, and that has to do with our sex hormones. So
yeah. I don't think that until I started researching how much our hormones affect everything in our body. Like everything.
It's not, and unfortunately, the problem is that so many of us see estrogen and progesterone as sex hormones, and they're sex hormones, but they're really metabolic hormones. They affect everything. Like you literally have an estrogen receptor on your optic nerve, on your colon, on your immune cells. So when estrogen is gone, and let's face it, it's gone. I mean, you're going to hear a lot about, well, the adrenals take over, and they do, but it's not estradiol, and estradiol is what we want. So adrenals will give us estrone. Okay, it's just not the same. So anyone who's kind of telling women, well, you don't need to because your adrenals will make some, yes, they'll make some, your fat cells will make some as well. But again, it's estrone. Your brain doesn't love estrone. Your brain loves estradiol. So.
And how many of us come into this with poor adrenal health to begin with because of all those other things that are going on, and that, that sort of failure to inform women is what really lights me and Maria up.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, the mood shifts, right? How many of us either experienced or know friends at this stage of life who were put on antidepressants out of the blue? They weren't anxious, depressed people their whole lives. And all of a sudden, boom, they're on an anti-anxiety med. Sleep, right? Boom, they're put on Ambien. So all of these things could be addressed differently. And I mean, one of our mentors likes to say that estrogen is a female's great homeostatic regulator. It provides balance in the body. Lose it, it's imbalanced.
Yeah. And this is just my take on it too, that if you do not have these hormones in your body, you will age quicker. You're going to look older, correct?
Yeah.
Like you are.
Yeah. And vanity is what drives a lot of women. And that's okay. Like we like to look good as women, I think, but, and it's good. But the thing is, that's unfortunately where so many of us stop, right? Is like at the vanity thing. So.
I know what I was going to say really quick was for anyone who has daughters or daughters-in-law or whatever, the way we make this finally stop and change for the better for all of us is teaching girls to stop thinking of their period as like Aunt Flo or the visitor or, the ruiner of her life. Yeah. And, if we look back to what the signaling and messaging is to us as females about our periods and estrogen, it's not positive, right? And so if, we could get, sex ed classes or whatever, health classes in the United States to teach girls that, these hormones that are triggering periods are actually doing a lot of other things. And maybe we would all look at PMS differently and understand what was going on instead of hating ourselves and pushing through it. So,
yeah. For sure. Yeah. Before we get into more of the hot topic, I just want your expert opinion on strength training and protein, because those are the things that I preach the most. So I always like experts to say what they think too.
Well, we have a phenomenal masterclass that we put together last year. It was actually in response to a faculty teaching that we did for other practitioners, doctors primarily, on the change in estrogen and the change in muscle. And what women don't appreciate is that we all know that with aging, we have muscle loss. That's just natural, starts in our 30s. It's going to happen. But what women don't understand is that we have estradiol receptors all over our muscle tissue. And, there's this difference between type 1 and type 2, the fast switch, slow switch presentation. Well, when we lose estradiol, we lose the signaling at that receptor on the muscle. And we suddenly lose fast twitch muscle and primarily end up with slow twitch muscle fibers. This explains why a lot of women end up in endurance sports in their 40s and beyond, because it's a happy, comfortable place, right? We're not used to power and strength and these sorts of things. But when you start to realize that our longevity, our ability to sit down on a toilet without holding on to grab bars on the wall, our ability to jump up on the curb when someone runs a yellow light, etc., that's going to require power and strength. And so we have to train it. It's absolutely required. Whether you choose to do HRT or not, you have to modify your movement and pursuit of exercise to favor the, preservation of muscle in a way that makes you functionally, able to do these things. And so strength training has to become the priority for women, and nobody likes to hear it because they feel unsexy doing it or awkward in the gym. It's not something our generation of women have been told to do. I mean, I was a lifelong athlete, but I grew up with all men and fighter pilots in my family. And so I was used to kind of like pushing past the feminine, idea of sports. And, we have to hire a trainer if you don't understand, stop following people based on YouTube videos and one-offing, because it needs to be a planned program. It needs to be progressive. Identify range of motion issues. I tease Maria, everyone needs to earn their heavy weights, but at the end of the day, we all need to be using heavy weights. And I don't mean 15-pound dumbbells. And I know that probably makes people sad, but we all have probably seen Train with Joan on Instagram, right? I mean, this is a woman in her 70s who's slinging heavy weights. We all can do it and we all should be doing it. So we're huge proponents of strength training for women.
Yeah, awesome. I say that a lot. I'm like, I want to at age 80, 90 years old, be able to get up off the floor. Yeah. That's a reason to strength train. Like I want to be able to walk
or hold your grandchild above your head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Push them on a swing, just do things, live life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's more than just being able to lift weights. It's living.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are going to move on to the hot topic that I know everyone wants to hear about, or that is HRT, hormone replacement therapy. For a long time, HRT, menopause, all the thing has been very hush hush. Nobody wants to talk about it. And the doors are finally opening because people like you are coming out and talking about it, having conversations. So what is the role of HRT?
Well, really, that's going to depend who you ask. Okay. You're going to have most conventional docs, not all, but most conventional docs, and even hopefully you guys know what this means, functional medicine, more integrative docs. And many of them you're going to say, well, HRT is for quality of life and if a woman has symptoms. And we completely disagree with that. We think HRT is for anyone who wants to age really well. If you're a good candidate, most women are. There are some absolute contraindications. There are not as many as most women think there are, but HRT is for anyone who wants to age with quality and, God willing, quantity of life. But it's really about quality of life and about protection against the chronic diseases of aging. With you doing your part with exercise and eating right, for sure.
Yeah. And we like to say too, the biggest thing about HRT, in addition to its purpose, is understanding what actually is HRT and what actually is not HRT. Newsflash, the birth control is not HRT. But then also understanding what there's a wide form. I mean, we talk about HRT like it's this single thing, and it's not. There's a huge spectrum of what can be used as HRT. And women need to know what they're seeking and what their choice or what's being offered to them is capable of. And that's the biggest difference, is that women are sold HRT from maybe their OBGYN who delivered all their babies. And they feel so trusted and in this great relationship, and they give them a little patch and maybe a little pill and send them on their way and never test their blood levels, never check in with them, as if it's like some thermostat that you can set and forget in the body. And then, off they go. And women feel duped because they're like, well, this didn't do what I was told it was going to do. Therefore, HRT must not work. And that's a lot of why and how there's some misconceptions around HRT, is because it's been poorly done for women. And, it's like Yelp, right? You only see people complaining about the restaurant, not really ever saying good things about it. And I feel like HRT kind of has that same reputation kind of within, the internet, is that you hear more about risks and problems and people having bad outcomes than you do the benefits and everything else. And Marie and I have an article we wrote on, kind of how did we get here? Because in the 1900s, early 1900s, HRT or estradiol was actually identified as a means of protecting women's disease risk. And it was used as conventional standard of care. Standard of care, like every doctor, standard of care, give her estradiol, she won't get osteoporosis. That was 100 years ago how we approached what they considered hormone deficiency. And that word is very triggering for a lot of women, if we're perfectly honest. And recently, Marie and I were engaged with someone, and I finally said, I don't care what you want to call it. I don't care. If you don't like deficiency, pick another name. But at the end of the day, when you understand what estradiol can do for you, you can at least make the informed decision. Do you want to age without it? Because if you age without it, you're going to age without its actions. Totally a prime choice. We don't judge anyone for choosing not to do HRT. Just don't make that decision based on internet-based knowledge, because that is, all fairly misguided. But
yeah, tell us a little bit more about what estradiol can do besides just help with hot flashes and things like that. There's a lot more it does.
Okay, so women on estradiol have a lower occurrence of colon cancer. So right there. That's kind of proven. All right. So not super proven, like not recommended for this as a general rule, but looking more and more in the literature that women on estradiol have less progression towards Alzheimer's. I mean, most women are more afraid of Alzheimer's than cancer.
And they know that when Maria, right? Because there's a lower burden of beta amyloid plaques in the brain of women who are using estradiol past menopause. So that's where, like Maria said, we can't prove it, right? Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, medical research right now is very much a pay-to-play environment. And, true estradiol is not something you can patent. You can only patent the form of delivery. And therefore, there's not a lot of incentive for the medical industrial complex to really study deeply the impacts of estradiol. But sorry, Maria, I interrupted, but that's what.
Most likely, if you don't use estradiol, you're going to get osteoporosis. Now, will you actually fall and break a hip or break a bone as a result of osteoporosis? No one knows that, but most likely your osteoporosis it's just a matter of time without estradiol on board. So there's that.
Sarcopenia is another one.
Yeah.
The heart muscle is very much dependent upon estradiol. And so you do see architectural changes within the structure of the heart as we age without estrogen. Maria, you said the colon, the brain.
Completely a vanity thing, but it slows down like wrinkling, like skin. It kind of, what is it, Kristen? It helps with collagen and
synthesis.
And just moisture in the skin as well. So
yeah, and that the collagen piece is really relevant too, even to the exercise and movement, because it shifts the collagen content and mineral content in our ligaments and connective tissues. And so this is why you see a lot of women as we get into midlife with the frozen shoulder issues and just other sort of range of motion joint limitations. And that has a lot to do with we're losing muscle contraction, we're losing collagen, therefore we're losing flexibility. So we become stiff and achy. Our cartilage, which is our cushion, requires estrogen in order to stay cushion. Otherwise, it's more of a deflated environment. So all of those things start to become issues too for women. And, the evidence is out there that women taking estradiol therapy are free of many of these issues. But whether or not we can, show a study that was designed in order to do essentially a controlled group without it and a control group with it, that's actually fairly cruel research. And so it's going to be something difficult to ever get anyone to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why people need to know about this, because it is for so much more our health. It's really to age better. It really is. Women are scared, I think, of HRT because of old research. We have heard it causes breast cancer. And I think that help us debunk this old myth.
Yeah, I mean, the breast cancer one's near and dear to my heart. My mom did die of breast cancer. She contracted her first breast cancer in her late 40s, early mid 40s, had it 3 times, 3 different types, etc. But my mom was also someone, as I said, went low hormones, no hormones at age 32. And she was one of the people put on Prempro, which was the drugs used in the 90s related to the Women's Health Initiative. They were synthetics. They were horse-derived estrogens. They were with the synthetic progestin. What we now know today is that those drugs are actually endocrine disruptors. They alter how even our natural hormones will signal at the receptor and how the receptor handles them. So someone like my mom, unfortunately, was really kind of screwed. She got put in that inflection point of, oh, you know what, gosh, maybe it's not good for all these women to age without hormones, but let's give them pharmaceutical-based synthetics and just kind of see how it goes. And then when it turns south, they yank the hormones out. And I could literally tell you the moment of my childhood where I saw my mom change from the woman I had had as a mother for decades to, you know, who she ended up dying as. And I will 100% tie it to that. So, you know, fast forward to me, I'm in that high risk category. I've been getting imaging and monitoring and genetic counseling and everything since I was 35 years old. I'm turning 53 this year. And in fact, I just got flagged in January with what they call, it was a benign tumor in my breast. And I sat down with the oncologist and said, okay, I'm on HRT and I'm not stopping. And she was like, I'm glad you're on HRT because you having natural hormones in the body is actually going to be a better, healthier environment for your breast tissue. And as women, we're never told that. And it starts because A, we had these crappy hormones in the 90s, but then B, doctors think birth control pills are hormones and they're not, they're endocrine disruptors. So, you know, this notion of cancer is so flawed as it relates to estradiol. And if it were the case, think all to when you were pregnant. Our levels of estrogen were literally thousands times higher than they are at any other time in our life. Did we all end up with cancer when we were pregnant? I mean, there's so much kind of crap thinking out there, but we understand it's scary. I mean, Maria said Alzheimer's and we would say cancer. Those two things scare women more than anything. And yet we're never told, you know, what actually might protect us from them. So I personally, plenty of risk. I've had 7 biopsies. I get imaged every 6 months. I mean, I've always joked with my husband, and I don't mean it joking, but you know, that I have a gun to my head and whether or not it's loaded, we'll see. But at the end of the day, me taking HRT is more protective than it is increasing my risk. So.
Good information. I want to hop back to what you said about birth control not being hormone replacement therapy, because some people are given that in their 40s saying, here, take this. This will help.
It's standard of care, right, Maria?
It's really, really bad. I mean, it's one thing I will kind of say if a woman is using birth control for birth control. I mean, there are better, healthier things, but look, like not everyone's cut out to do that. So if you're going to use birth control for birth control, fine. But like when it's given to a woman for symptom management, and by the way, American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists position is that you can stay on it until you're 55 years old. That is a travesty because you don't know like where you are in that menopausal transition. You know, you downregulate something called your estrogen receptor. You potentially can, you know, it's not good for the gut as well. We've probably known this for decades. So now you have a woman who's stayed, you know, who's followed ACOG rules because that's what a gynecologist said to do. She comes off at 55. She's probably several years postmenopausal, probably that based on kind of population averages. And now she has downregulated receptors. She's probably put weight on. She's just struggling so much with her gut. Can she go out on HRT and turn these things around? Yes, but ideally, we want women to start HRT way before full menopause. That is optimal and ideal. So yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about what Maria just mentioned is that, you know, they have evidence that, like, let's say the changes in the endothelium, which is the lining of the pipe, so to speak, on the vascular walls, right, inside our arteries and whatnot. Those architectural changes start happening in our 40s. We might not get vasomotor symptoms, i.e. hot flashes, till we hit 50, but our artery health has actually already started to be modified. And these are the things that we can't go test, right? No, I mean, some people might be able to go get what is it called, Maria? Endopat, like an ultrasound scan of everything in order to look at the health of that. Vast majority of us aren't going to be able to get access to that, but that's the stuff that's changing. So when you're given birth control in your 40s, you're being cheated out of the opportunity to prevent those changes from happening.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good info. Yeah. Switching back over to HRT, there's, pills, patches, pellets. How do we know what's good, what's not good? Where do you start? I mean, like, I saw a doctor, my hormones were gone, and the first thing she wanted to do is give me testosterone. And I was like, I knew enough. I'm like, I know that's not where I start. No. And I ran. So like, where does a girl even start?
Well, I would say
that's a whole other class in and of itself, but maybe Kristen will just talk about pellets.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, or we could just say to keep it, you kind of have to create a decision tree for yourself. So a really simple first decision is synthetic or not synthetic. Okay, don't go synthetic. So that takes out a whole bunch of them. Then when we look at what's called bioidentical, what is it, Maria? Body identical, body or biomimicking, whatever. It's just saying that you have the same molecular structure in this exogenous hormone as what we made endogenously. That's what you want to go for. However, there's caveats. We don't ever want to swallow our hormones in terms of estradiol. So if you're given an oral option as it relates to estrogen, another decision tree trunk, no, right? So there's little things like that, but then we do have sort of this range of bioidentical, non-synthetic hormones not taken orally when it comes to estrogen. And, it can go from pellets and patches and creams and injections and all of this stuff. This is where we fall back on. It depends on what you're seeking. It really depends. It depends on your lifestyle. It depends on, do you need it covered by insurance? Do you have small children or small pets in the home that you care for? Do you have a super active lifestyle? You're traveling all the time and maybe you just need kind of the, easy peasy route, whatnot. So this is where, this takes a lot of education. And again, that informed consent idea, and then making your own decision tree in order to make the decisions about what something is, what it isn't, what it can do and what it can't, and how it fits in your life. So
yeah, good answer. Need to work with someone closely, have it monitored, get educated, all of that. Okay, so here's a hot question that I get asked. Will it make me gain weight?
Oh gosh, we get that all the time too. I think every woman's going to age with a little bit of weight on her. We know a very close colleague of ours who would messages like, nobody has to age with a little excess weight. It's just, we look at it like, don't be so fixated on this 5 to 10 pound shift as you age, with or without hormones. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. And there's a term in Chinese medicine that refers to that 5 to 10 pounds as money bags. And at the end of the day, we need a little excess because we are not as efficient in our healing, in our inflammation control, in our immune response, all of these things as we age. And sometimes a little bit of extra weight can provide us the insurance that we're not going to die if something traumatic happens. If we're in a car accident and we are at this ridiculous 15% body fat, and we've been strictly keeping the scale on a particular number, your risk is actually higher for all-cause mortality after an event and illness, things like that. So we kind of don't give a lot of credence to this concern about 5 to 10 pounds. But in reality, the other thing to know is that when Maria was describing what estradiol does, she was talking about, kind of plumping the skin. It also plumps our tissues throughout our muscle tissue. It helps us retain and pull water in, and creatine, amino acid uptake, all of these things. Same thing with our joints. Well, if you enjoyed kind of the leaner physique of your 30s and 40s, you were actually partly enjoying the leaner presentation of lower estrogen. And so when you replace estrogen back to these physiologic levels, we do kind of go back to some softness. It doesn't mean that your body composition has to change, but there is going to be a little more plumpness. I joke all of the time. I have 3 sons. Maria's got 4 sons. They sucked us dry. Boobs went down to nothing. And I used to think that was just from having nursed them all for so long. It's also partly the low hormones that I was ending up with. Well, estradiol has a huge influence on the curvature, shape, and volume of a female breast. So if you look down at your boobs and you think they look deflated, or you see your mom and they're hanging down, that's low estrogen. So guess what HRT does? Plumps those babies right back up. And my husband jokes all the time. He's like, this was the cheapest non-boob job I ever paid for. And that's my HRT. So, when I look on the scale, I got bigger boobs and the scale went up a couple pounds. Not going to bother me, because to me, that's my health insurance right there.
Right. I love that you said that. Just as kind of your life insurance policy for life, like you sometimes need, and honestly, let's think about it. Are we going to be as lean as we were when we were 20? No, it's just really not going to happen. And we shouldn't be. We've had life happen. We're children. I mean, things are changing. And so I think we have to get rid of that number on the scale, focus more on how we feel, how do our clothes fit? And do we have more muscle now because we're lifting weights? Muscle does weigh. It does, so don't focus so much on that scale weight. Yeah.
No, and Maria outed me on Instagram a while back with a post in which I shared that I today at 53 32 pounds higher than I was the day I got married 30 plus years ago. And yet I'm in the same size clothing. So that scale says, and I would venture to argue that I am healthier today at 53 than I was at 20 some when I got married. So again, scale weight, Maria and I just don't pander to those concerns all that often because it has nothing to do with health.
You're right. Awesome. Okay. Well, we are getting close to our time limit here. So just going to look really quickly through the questions. Did you guys see anything come through that we could quickly answer?
One thing Maria could answer about one of the questions you have, number 9, about testing. It's required to know if HRT is needed, Maria. That seems to be one that women are always looking for.
Well, I mean, any really good doctor is most likely going to want to test you before you start HRT. Okay. Most of them. If a woman is like several years post-menopausal, has all the low estrogen signs, you could probably get away with it, but even not testing, but even more importantly though, so North American Menopause Society has a position statement, and that is that testing is not needed to guide dosing. We disagree. I mean, this is a bit of a David and Goliath thing because, that's Goliath and we are David because I, shared some information about that, and I had a very well-known OBGYN literally eviscerate me for disagreeing with NAMS, but
so bad.
Yeah, she's just a horrible person. I'm just going to say that right now. But here's the thing, if you're doing, let's just say a patch, super common, pretty well accepted, nothing, it's estradiol in most cases, unless you get, I believe a Climera Pro is it estradiol and norethindrone, so it's a combination. Yeah. So, but your basic estradiol patch is, it's a good, decent product. Whether or not it's going to raise your estradiol serum level high enough is debatable. We want to test that. So why would we want to take you from a 5, now you're 2 years postmenopausal, your estradiol level is 5 picograms, almost non-detectable. Okay, we slap that patch on you, we get you up to 30, woo woo, right? Not really, not really. So that's why we're believers in testing to guide dosing, testing and paying attention to symptoms to guide dosing. Now, I know the next question is, what should my level be? It's going to be a little bit more of a nuanced conversation, but we would say at least 50, could be 150, but
and can be higher, and that's the other thing. We all differ, where I feel, let's say an estradiol of 300 might be where Maria feels at 100. So, that whole individuality of our bodies and physiology needs to come into it. I saw someone ask a question about, can she take HRT with Synthroid or levothyroxine? Yeah, I mean, we were just providing slides about, there is a huge interplay between estrogen and thyroid health in terms of estrogen's impact on our body's ability to produce thyroid hormone. Estradiol modulates inflammation. If your thyroid issues are Hashimoto's autoimmune related, estradiol can help with things. The whole body's existence needs to be in balance. And so this is why some women may not be having great experiences because of our very siloed medical industry. Is we might have an endocrinologist who's dealing with the thyroid, and then you might have your OBGYN who's dealing with HRT. They're not talking. Nobody's talking about, making sure that they're complementing one another and that everything's working properly. So, we really are adamant that if women are going to start to look at HRT, they have to be with a provider who is holistically trained on all of these things and is going to manage her as a woman, not just a blood serum marker of estradiol.
Yep. Yeah. Good question.
I just want to grab Michelle's question. I had estrogen positive breast cancer. Am I a candidate for HRT? Hard to say, Michelle. I mean, it's hard to say how far are you from your cancer diagnosis? what stage was your cancer when you had it. Like you're gonna be hard pressed to find a doctor who will prescribe for you. We maybe have a few doctors that might do it depending on those questions. So 7 years ago
7
is
years ago.
good. And yeah, it's just, we don't know for sure. So
Yeah. And just know that, I mean, this is kind of going far afield, but even some of the hospitals out in Boston have pioneered breast cancer treatment, and they will actually treat estrogen positive cancer with high dose estrogen. And the reason is because the body's response when estradiol levels are actually super high are to downregulate receptors. And so you could get just enough estradiol serum circulating to protect the bones in the heart and whatnot, but have it super high so that they shut down the receptor and you can prevent the breast cancer. But that's a super nuanced thing. And you just need a really good provider. But are there people, Michelle, who will work with you? Yeah, there are. So
I'm going to ask you one last question. I saw in the chat, like, when is it too late? Can somebody 60 years old start on HRT, or is that too late?
possibly, it depends on the health of the vascular system. Like when it really becomes a problem is if we have plaques.
yeah, if you have significant coronary artery disease, then you just need to be managed differently, because estradiol, like we talked about, signals insulin. It also signals calcium. It tells the body where to lay down calcium and where to shuttle it out. You'll hear some providers talk about this window of opportunity, and they say it's a 10-year window. There's actually no scientific basis for that. That just happened to be one of the studies designed themselves around is this 10-year window. We have clients in their 70s who are starting HRT. They've been menopausal for a long time. And one of our own providers has her 96-year-old mother on HRT. So yeah.
Then you're also saying it's not something we have to get off of.
No, I mean, if you do develop cancer, and by the way, women who use HRT can get cancer. Women who do not use HRT can get cancer. It's just a matter of breasts and birthday. It's like being a female, and growing older is your biggest cancer risk. So, it's entirely possible. Either one of us could get cancer. We would have to come off. I mean, knowing the two of us, we, hopefully get that cancer over with. I think probably I could speak for the both of us. We would go back on if we were able, and we do have some colleagues that have done that. What conditions or circumstance suggest that HRT should not be used? So like active cancer for sure would be one. And
if
then
you've got like factor V Leiden clotting disorders and have never had children. So a lot of people think that clotting disorders and estradiol can't be mixed. Estradiol actually improves certain genetic clotting disorders, but you have to have had a pregnancy successfully without clots. That becomes kind of one of the nuances. So again, hopefully you're seeing that as Maria and I are kind of putting conditions on some of these topics, that just going to your OB who delivered your babies, they're not going to be trained in these nuances. And there are many providers who are, and that's who you need to be working with. OBGYNs, Maria, what was the one she just acknowledged? How many hours of menopause education did she get in her curriculum? It was like 4 hours or something. They get about as much on menopause as they get on nutrition. And we all know how much doctors suck when it comes to nutrition. So, be careful when you go and seek this trusted provider, whether or not you're asking something of them that they're even in a position to give you advice on. So.
Yes. So as we close out, tell us how these listeners can find you at your website, Instagram. You actually even have a free Mighty Networks group, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So our website is wiseandwell.me, and our Instagram is also wise and well. So just type that in the search bar. We should come up, and they can get to our Mighty Network through our Instagram. It's in the link in the bio. And so our Mighty Network is sort of like an alternate kind of platform where we share. Instagram is soundbite health, right? Soundbite anything for the most part. So we have some like really amazing stuff in there, like the 7-part article we wrote on cholesterol. So if anyone's thinking about going on a statin, please come over to our Mighty Network and read that. We have stuff in there like if menopause is natural, why should I even consider HRT? Like what else, Kristen, have we recently put in there?
Well, Mealy would like it. We have some discussions around meat and strength training, protein and amino acids, understanding, you know, why plant proteins aren't necessarily going to build your muscles. Not to say that they're bad, but don't be pursuing them again towards a particular goal. We just wrote one on amino acid supplementation and why women need to understand that, you know, whole food nutrients or whole food based supplements are important for their synergistic relationships of different compounds. We try and get a little bit more meaty and geeky in that. Maria and I love to kind of research stuff. We don't have as much time to do it as we used to, but we try and pump out things every once in a while. So,
well, I will include your website, your Instagram on the replay, the notes that I'm sending out via email. So anybody that's wasn't able to participate today is getting a replay. That will all be included so they can find you. They can also, you know, work with you on, you know, online. You don't have to live in their state. So just know that there's an option there too to work one-on-one with them as well. So thank you so much for being here today. You gave us so much knowledge. I know that everybody on this call said it was excellent. I saw the comments coming through, so informative, so insightful. So thank you for making us more aware of some things. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg, right?
It was, yeah, it was. And I'll just say real quick, if we're still alive, Kristen Johnson, in a year and a half, we just actually signed a major book deal with a publishing company. So we're going to have a book on menopause coming out. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let me know. I'll have you back
to write it.
We'll talk about your book. Congratulations. That's exciting. Very much. Again, thanks so much. And thanks for being here and joining us today. And live well, right?
Right.
Yes.
Thanks again. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.